Hello everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about something a little bit different. If you see my other content, it's a lot of gaming videos. What happened last week is I was trying to play Ocarina of Time Randomizer, and I'm a basic noob at trying to figure out anything computer related. I saw somebody else play it, I thought, I want to do that, and I tried to do it myself, but I ran into a lot of problems. So I figured it all out, and I wanted to give a quick tutorial about it because some of the other tutorials are a little bit outdated. The last one that I found was like in August or September of 2019, and a lot of things have kind of changed a little bit. So I just wanted to run through the process, give you the different steps, what you need in order to do this, and also potential problems that you may face. So what you need is a Windows computer with Windows 10. And then the next thing that you would need would be either RetroArch or Project 64. Both of those are emulators, and what emulators do is they basically just can emulate any past game. So anything that's like not for PC, being Nintendo 64 or like a Sega Genesis or like a Dreamcast or anything like that. I would recommend RetroArch or Arch because of the fact that just Project 64 isn't that intuitive. Like, it has like a really weird screen to it, and like I just couldn't figure it out. So RetroArch is a little bit more, I don't know, I guess you could say user friendly. Then you would need a Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time ROM, and I'll go over how to find each one of these, so don't worry. You'll need a controller that ends in a USB. I recommend like an Xbox controller, just because that's kind of like the one easiest to get, and it's kind of like really cheap. And two, because it works really well with the input layouts of RetroArch, which I'll show you in a second. And last thing that you need, patience. Hopefully you don't need too much patience, or you don't really need to troubleshoot too much, but it can get quite frustrating sometimes. So the first step is to Google search, and we're going to Google search Ocarina of Time. Oh, geez, not that. Ocarina of Time. We'll just go randomizer. You'll get to this website, version 6.0. So it's a little bit different than previous ones, but so you hit play now. And then basically you're going to get this set up. So you can see that my last seed and ID and stuff like that was all randomly generated earlier. That's today. But so you got all these different options. You can hover over each one, and it'll tell you what each one does. So that's very, very useful, because I look at this and I'm just automatically confused. But, you know, you hover over one of these and it tells you glitchless, no glitches, blah, blah, blah. And then you can set a whole bunch of different stuff. Starting age, shuffling songs, shop sanity, token sanity, small keys, which is key sanity. So a whole bunch of different options. You can even pick what you want to start with. So starting equipment, starting songs, starting items. Cosmetics is one of the coolest ones. So you can set like all the different colors for the tunics, or Navi could be a different color. And then sound effects can be random too. So then what you basically do is you set all those options, and then you hit generate seed. You click that. You'll wait about 15 seconds or so. Sometimes it's a little bit faster depending on what web browser you're using. I'm using Google Chrome, by the way, so very standard. We'll wait till it's done, and then when it's done, it'll give you this code here. And you can also copy the clipboard to get the exact seed that it produced. So the next step is, after setting all those options, we're going to get a Legend of Zelda ROM. And what that means is that it's just like a copy of Legend of Zelda. So we'll type in Legend of Zelda. Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. So this is a very important step. You're going to want to get version 1.0. And the reason why is, here, I'll show you what happens when you get version 1.2. 1.2 is what you're going to come across, like everybody. If you look at all of these are all like valid ways to get version 1.2. If you get 1.2 and you download it, right? So you go like save game, and then it should download. And so it downloads here, down in the zip folder. That'll open up. So right when it's done, we'll open it up in a folder, and I'll show you what that looks like. Come on, there we go. So we open that up. It's in a zip file, and so it's just sitting here, right? And that's version 1.2. If you try to put it, you're going to want to put it into base ROM, right? So you'll hit browse. We go to the latest one. That's the one that we just created right now. Z64 1.2. We try to open it. Z64 matches with here. You hit patch ROM, and it's not compatible. And it says use 1.0 ROM instead. Problem with that, it's a little bit hard to find the 1.0 ROM. So we can go back to our search bar and just type in 1.0. You're going to get people needing help. You're going to get, this one was, I think, wasn't that reliable to actually get it. Or it was, you get enough search engine stuff that this is actually a 1.2 copy. But it just doesn't say, so Google just tries its best. You get a Squarespace one that basically goes nowhere. The website expired. You got downloads for here, but this is just a bunch of random different mods, so that's not even the right one. So you can spend a while looking for it. By the time that you might watch this video, the one that I use or used might not be available, but it was in this one. So you can copy this word for word, basically. I used it. My computer hasn't been corrupted. I haven't got any viruses yet, so hopefully this is a safe one. But you can download the version 1.0. It's in another zip folder. Once you unzip it, then you can actually have it in your computer. Same thing under downloads. And mine was last week. I was able to get this one. So this is a copy of it. And I was able to get it here. And then basically what you would do is hit patch ROM. It starts going through everything, and then once it gets down to 0 files remaining, you'll see what it does. So it basically creates it down here. I would open it in a folder, and I would just name it something so that you can easily find it later, because that's pretty important. So let's name it Poodle. There we go. So we got the Poodle folder. And then so we'll go on to the next step. So the next step is we're going to get RetroArch or Project 64. Like I said, I recommend RetroArch just because it's a lot easier to use. It's not the easiest to use, or it could be easier to use, I should say. But I feel like it is easier to use than Project 64. So we got RetroArch. We go on to it. You just hit get RetroArch. And then download stable should work, but if it detects what OS you're using, so mine's Windows 32, there's 32-bit, and you can hit download. And then it should just download RetroArch straight onto your computer. After you hit install and stuff like that, you get to the actual menu of RetroArch. But we'll get into that. Well, what we can do now is the next step would be to load a core. So what the cores are the same as emulators. Cores and emulators, identical terms. This is where it can kind of get confusing. So also, I would recommend, I'm using a mouse and keyboard right now. The interface for this is highly dependent on the fact that you use a controller. I recommend, just a standard Xbox 360, ends in a USB, plug that straight into the computer, and then you can use it to, navigate the menu, so you can see that I'm not using my mouse anymore. I'm actually just using a regular controller. But you can use a mouse. You just have to make sure when you want to back out of a menu, so I can left click to get into that menu, and then right click on the left side of the screen here, and that'll take you back to here. A little weird. That's why it's not like super intuitive, but you can also see like instructions are based on the fact that you might have a controller already plugged in. But so we go to load core, and again, cores, same exact thing as emulators. You go to download a core, and right here is a list of all the different chords. So you're able to see like a whole bunch of different stuff. This is like, old kind of like Commodore 64 type kind of stuff. Doom 3, you could see that there. Microsoft, Minecraft, Bomberman over here. So then you want to get down to where you're going to find Nintendo 64 stuff. Game Boy Advance, if you ever want to do like Pokemon type kind of games. So you go down to N64. Now there's two that you can choose from. You can choose Mupen 64 Plus, or you can use Parallel. I used Mupen 64 Plus the first time, and I experienced quite a lot of crashes. So I would actually recommend Parallel. Most people recommend this one, but I've had more success with this one. So, you know, use whichever one you think might be the best. So you basically click on it. It downloads. Mine's already downloaded. And then so what you want to do is back out of RetroArch, and we're going to go, or actually what you can do real quick is you can hit load core, and you can hit Nintendo 64, and now it'll show up down here. So Parallel N64. That just means that the system of RetroArch right now is ready to run an N64 game. So if you were able to put an N64 game into this program, it'll be like, okay, good to go. So the next step is to go to OoT Randomizer, and we have our file all ready to go. It should be now patched. So that's why we have Poodle now. So Poodle is ready to go. It is a random Ocarina of Time file. And all we have to do now is get it into RetroArch. So how we do that is we go to load content. And then so I have two different disk drives. This gets saved to C. You go to users, whatever user your name is. So mine's Emilo. And then we go down to downloads for the most recent ones. And then you can see all the different downloads that I've done recently. But you can see right here, Poodle's in here. So we click on Poodle, and it starts opening up Poodle. And you can notice that all the music's different. So if you have a controller plugged in, you can automatically just start playing. And you go ahead and you can see the code at the top is going to be, you know, the same that you saw before. And you can hit File and start your game. And then everything's working fine, as it should be. And you can go outside and, you know, start your game. One of the first problems that you might encounter is the fact that when you're trying to figure out whether you want Project 64 or RetroArch, Project 64 is just not intuitive. So I would still recommend RetroArch because it is a little bit easier to figure out, even though there's like a butt ton of different options and stuff like that that I still don't fully understand. I don't think you have to fully understand in order to, you know, safely play this game. And the other thing is the RetroArch controller needs to be, or you should have a controller in order to plug it in. I do not recommend playing any games like this using a mouse and keyboard, just because it's going to be a lot harder to control. One thing I should add is you have to set controls both in RetroArch and in the game that you're playing. So if your controller is not working, which is one thing that I had quite often happen, is because there are two menus for controls. If you go down to settings and you go down to input, where the little controller is, you can go down and you can go to port 1 controls. That way, so I have my Afterglow gamepad for Xbox 360 plugged in. You can set this to left analog, so that way you can control the menu with the left stick. And then basically these will be binded to, you basically hit set all controls, and then it'll go through each one of these and you can press each button, and then that way everything that you have is binded in here. So basically it'll recognize what controller you have, so when you hit set all controls, it'll go and set all the controls on your actual controller so you can navigate these menus. That is the sole purpose of that. The thing that tripped me up was that, and you gotta make sure you load your core again, and then we're going to find Poodle. Actually, another cool thing is that if you go to history, a lot of your stuff will be saved. So Poodle's up here. And you run Poodle. No, Poodle's in this menu. Hold on. There we go. If you hit F1, the F1 key, that'll bring up this menu, which is super important that I didn't know at all. So big tip there. hit F1 and you're going to open up this menu. Then you're going to go over to controls. And then in controls, so this menu is separate than the menu within RetroArch. This is your N64 menu. So this is where you're going to bind keys or bind your controller in order to, play this game. So some of the important ones is the fact that, like, if you have an Xbox controller, the B button is, so another important thing here, this little window is not in any relation to the controller that you have. Keep that in mind, because this means that B button is going to be the B button on an Xbox 360 controller, and it's going to ask whether you want to bind it to something on an N64 controller. Because when you click on this, you're going to get all the options of an N64 controller, because this is an N64 game. You're going to get the option to make it A button, B button, start, up, down, left, right, the right stick, or like the triggers, the control sticks. So, or you can set it to nothing, which is what I have it set to right now. This is an important layout. I would recommend, I'll just go through this entire page. Like, you guys can pause the video if you need to bind your keys to this exact layout, because this is what works best for me. I also have it where, he will shield if you do right trigger, and then he'll target if you do left trigger. That's just because, I don't know, it's easier for me to think that way, that shield is just press down on the right trigger, and then zoom in on an enemy is left trigger, instead of trying to deal with that. This right here is why this is so confusing, because, like, you see left 2 button trigger, and then it's like, well, do I want to map that to left trigger on the N64 controller, or... And so you can kind of test out what works best for you, but just always remember, this right side is N64 controls. This left side is going to be whatever controller you plug in to your computer. So mine's an Xbox controller. And the other important thing is that this layout, because the Y button on an Xbox 360 controller is not this layout. If you know the layout of an Xbox controller, Y is the top button. So this is just a lie. And same thing with this one, and same thing with these two. These are all, like, I don't know the science behind them. I don't know why they're like that. But that should help you guys out. So if your game is gonna, if you experience any crashes within playing Ocarina of Time Randomizer, there's a couple of settings in this menu that might help you a lot. So if you go to options, by default, this is on dynamic recompiler. Now keep in mind, I'm still a noob. I don't know what any of this means, but I do know that pure interpreter has stopped crashes. So I like to keep the CPU core as pure interpreter. That'll help with number one. The other thing is that when you make that change, RetroArch doesn't save your things automatically. So you're going to want to go to overrides, and you're going to want to say save core overrides. And that little tip came from One Trick Ponita, who helped me a lot during my stream when I was trying to figure out this stuff for the first time. That those tips really help out with the crashes. So I'm going to put her link in the description below, and you guys can go check her out. And then this is probably the biggest problem I faced when streaming this the other week, is sometimes your controller won't work at all. And when it doesn't work within this menu of RetroArch, so this menu right here, in order to get to everything, I would recommend that you take RetroArch, and as long as you save all the files of, like, any time that you did any game or whatever, save those from your file browser, and just get rid of the entire rest of RetroArch. Like, every other folder, every other file, uninstall everything, and then reinstall it. And that helped me out a lot. When in doubt, just uninstall and reinstall, and it'll hopefully sort itself out. One of the biggest problems with that is definitely the fact that if you do find an OoT Randomizer that has a 1.2 version that actually gets through the browse and then patch ROM settings, that messes up quite a lot of stuff. And there's a lot of messed up different files out there for OoT Randomizer. So I would recommend be a little bit careful, be a little bit cautious, and kind of just like, yeah, check all your sources whenever you're going to any of those websites, because some of them are a little tricky. Hopefully this made logical sense and you guys can, easily now get OoT Randomizer working on your Windows 10 computer. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. I will try to respond to any comment posted as fast as I can in order to help anybody out with this process, because I know what it's like. I love this game immensely, and I love playing it randomized because you get to learn all different tactics of like where you should go and what characters you should talk to next, and I really love this game, and I can understand that if somebody wants to play it and is having difficulties, how frustrating that can be. So definitely feel free to reach out. I am on Twitch as Soon to Be Killer. Every Saturday I stream this game, and if you guys have any questions, stop by. I'm 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. PST, and yeah, any questions at all, stop on by. I'll answer them as best as I can, and we'll try to work through any individual problems that you might have with this game. So see you guys later. Thanks. Bye.